Hello and welcome to India's World. Today we are going to discuss the possible nuclear deal between Iran and the P5+1 group of countries, that is US, UK, Russia, China, France plus Germany. Currently the talks are being held in Switzerland between the US and Iran, led by US Secretary of State John Kerry and Iranian Foreign Minister Javed Zarif. The other countries are likely to come on board once a draft deal is reached to roll back Iran's nuclear program. This would then pave the way for the lifting of punitive US and UN sanctions against Iran. The governments have set for themselves a deadline of March 31st for a draft deal, with a full agreement expected by July. Complicating these developments is the strong political opposition to such a deal both within the US and within Iran. To discuss the possible nuclear agreement between Iran and the P5+1 countries, we have with us a very distinguished panel of experts. We have with us Ambassador Sheel Sharma, former Secretary General of SAARC. He was also India's ambassador to Austria. He's an expert on disarmament and has worked for the International Atomic Energy Agency in Vienna. We have with us Ambassador Vivek Katju, a well-known commentator on international relations. He was a former secretary in Ministry of External Affairs. He was in charge of Iran for nearly 6 years in the ministry and was India's ambassador to Afghanistan, Myanmar and Thailand. And we have with us Mr. Ravi Joshi, a former joint secretary in the External Intelligence Agency of India, the Research and Analysis Wing, or RA&W. He was in charge of the Iran desk for 4 years. He keeps visiting that country and knows Iran well. So I welcome all of you to this discussion. Ambassador Sheel Sharma, let me begin with you. What are the goals of the US in the Iran nuclear deal? Would it be correct to say that through a deal with Iran, Washington wants to extend the time required by Iran to make a bomb? Currently, it's estimated to be 3 to 4 months, and they want it to become at least a year.
Well, I think since the question is very poignant, let me read it to you what the Deputy to Kerry said in the Congress 2 days back. And it puts the US goals very well. Okay. He says, like it or not, Iran knows how to enrich uranium, and we cannot bomb that away. We cannot sanction that away. And unfortunately, we probably cannot negotiate that away. The only option, he said, is to limit Iran's capabilities through an accord. And the inspection regime now, which they are negotiating, would be the most intrusive in history. Actually, it will go beyond the additional protocol of the IAEA and insist on regular monitoring anytime, any day, any place. And then he said that even after the expiry of the period of agreement, Iran would be banned for building a bomb for perpetuity, which means the US wants to ensure. These are very, very succinct, but they have long meanings. Yep. The last point, that Iran will be banned for perpetuity, that means US wants to ensure that Iran remains in the NPT, doesn't leave it. Monitoring
NPT
means
is the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty.
So that Iran doesn't leave that, and as a non-nuclear weapon state. Monitoring means that ensuring that international community is now confident that Iran would not do what it has committed not to do. Limiting implies that its enrichment facility, its output of the enrichment and the centrifuges are limited so that the breakout period is large enough. And first point that you cannot bomb this away is that to acknowledge Iran's prowess in nuclear technology.
Okay. Ambassador Katju, do you agree with him? Because if a lay reading of what's going on suggests that the US has recognized that there can't be a complete rollback of Iran's nuclear ambitions, but that some kind of restraint should be there, and therefore they're talking of the period of the deal, say 10 years they're saying. So does it mean that after 10 years, because a lot of commentators say that after this deal expires, theoretically, Iran is free to enrich uranium to whichever level it wants?
To answer that question, I would say that Iran would still be a member of the NPT, and it would have the obligations of a non-nuclear power of the NPT. Therein, it is very different from India, for example. We are not a part of the NPT, so we are free to do what we want. But the fact is that while the Americans are realistic enough to realize what Sheel has elaborated, the Iranians and part of the American establishment, say the Republicans, don't want Iran to have any nuclear infrastructure at all. They are saying that any nuclear infrastructure, leave alone enrichment, they don't even want Iran to have any fissile material production capacity.
No, as long as it's a pathway to a bomb, they don't want it.
No, if you hear people like Netanyahu carefully, what they are saying is that anything to do with nuclear materials is dangerous with Iran, because once that you don't eliminate that, then Iran is hell-bent on building a nuclear weapon, and the path will be clear. They'll find a way to do it.
My question was, why is this deal only for 10 years?
Because realistically, you can't have a deal like this in perpetuity. The Iranians would not agree. The Iranians are in a bind today. The sanctions have bitten.
Okay.
And therefore, what they are agreeing is a period within which they say that fine, we'll accept all this, but then they will argue that we will accept only the normal innovations of the NPT.
Right. Can I just make a point here?
Please.
Actually, in the wake of Netanyahu's statement in the US Congress, there has been a lot of hair splitting. And I read an interesting piece in the New York Times where they said that Netanyahu actually did not talk of the zero option, which means that he might be conceding admissibility of a few centrifuges. Maybe they are talking about a few hundred centrifuges.
That's Netanyahu talking of 100 centrifuges.
Because no, so what I'm saying is that what Vivek said, that is what is the overall atmosphere built by Netanyahu, that nothing.
Okay.
But those who are now trying to get into his speech, they are saying that maybe he's conceding that. And after his election, he has been making a different kind of noises.
Okay. We will discuss Israel in a bit. But Ravi, could an agreement on a 10-year agreement on Iran's uranium enrichment program, restraint on the program, eventually lead to a breakthrough for a larger deal, as Ambassador Sheel Sharma was suggesting, which will contain Iran's all nuclear weapons related activities?
Now, before I answer that, I would like to highlight a few developments that have taken place on the international stage since November 2013, which have changed the dynamics of the power play within the P5+1 group. You must remember that this is not only a US come Iran bilateral deal. It's a multilateral deal of P5+1 countries with Iran. So it is not, US is not the only sole power deciding.
No, that's clear.
But the two developments that I'm referring to are the Ukraine crisis, which has changed the dynamics between Russia and US, and the emergence of ISIS, which has resulted in the ISIS, Islamic State in Iraq, which has resulted in enormous US dependence on Iran to actually fight. The boots on the ground are being provided by Iran. So the dynamics of the region is also changing.
And therefore?
Therefore, US is not completely in a very powerful position to dictate the terms.
Okay.
Now, if the talks fail, Russia and China are not likely to fall in line for further sanctions.
Yep. Okay.
And US needs the deal as much as Iran needs.
Okay.
That's my point.
Okay, before we close this section, Ambassador Sharma, why is it being said that the US has consistently lowered its expectations from Iran? Is it because of these reasons? Because initially they were talking of 400 to 500 centrifuges being allowed to enrich uranium for making bombs. Then they took the figure up to 4,000 centrifuges, then to 6,000, and now apparently they're negotiating only 6,500 centrifuges.
Well, you know, I don't agree with this larger politics impinging on these talks, because the framework of the talks was set in 2013 November. By then, none of these factors were actually in play. And P5 actually are working together because Iran worries them all. If Iran crosses the Rubicon, then it will create problems not only for US, but even for Russia, for Iran. So they have actually fixed this thing. Now, negotiations with Iran are always like that, you begin with a very strong demand, but you continue to dilute it. So it is nothing new. If you remember, in 2003, when they were first found doing these things, it was a very strong position because they were found violating what they had agreed not to do in the NPT. But then they were allowed, okay, you accept additional protocol, go ahead and at least explain to the IAEA. So then Iranians did a year of, so it was actually much milder. Then they decided, the Americans at that time were right-wing Americans, they wanted to go ahead and haul Iran to the Security Council. But the others counseled them that, look, let's talk. So I think the strong demand is the hardline demand.
Okay.
But the US negotiating space is very large.
Okay.
So that's why they have actually come down to 6,000.
This will still be a 40%
But
reduction.
it's a giveaway also as a quid pro quo for Iran accepting that Generation 2 and Generation 3 safeguards will be controlled. And I think the negotiating problems are that they might have to do actually intensive monitoring to ensure that R&D bit.
All right. I'll come back to you in a minute. We need to take a break at this point. We'll be back again with this interesting discussion in a bit. Stay with us. Welcome back. We are discussing the US-Iran negotiations to craft a deal to roll back Iran's nuclear program. And once that is done, the P5+7, the other countries will also come into it. Vivek, you wanted to say something before we...
I think the real difficulty at the moment is not only the number of centrifuges, but as Sheel rightly said, R&D. Because with R&D, even within these 10 years, the efficiency of those centrifuges can increase.
So therefore, they have talked of enrichment levels
Therefore,
and the quality and the type of centrifuges as
exactly, but the Iranians, to the best of my knowledge, are still not willing to put a curb on their R&D.
Yeah. But let me ask you something else. You know, it's all right to curb levels of enrichment of uranium and types of centrifuges. What happens to Iran's heavy water plant which produces plutonium? Because plutonium offers another route to a bomb.
I think there, my impression is that the Iranians will be a little more flexible.
In fact, to add to what Ambassador Katju said, one of the deputy foreign ministers of Iran said that we are ready to change the core design of the plutonium reactor. So there is a concession, which has already been expressed. But I must highlight one thing. Iran has already done quite a bit of on its part. The February 2014 IAEA report clearly says that Iran has stopped enrichment at the Fordo nuclear plant, which was the main smoking gun, and also in the Natanz reactor, which was an R&D reactor. And also it has reduced, it has stopped the 20% enrichment. It has downsized and it is blending into uranium oxide.
Yeah, but let me ask you about the Fordo enrichment plant, which is very deep underground.
It's under the mountain.
Why is it a bone of contention? Why do Iranians say that we will continue to enrich some amount of uranium there for scientific research purposes, and Americans are saying that repurpose that plant? Do the Americans believe that the plant is located so deep underground that none of the existing bunker bursting missiles can reach to it, and that should Iran break the deal, this is where they will enrich the uranium?
See, first of all, the discovery of the Fordo plant was made by the outside world. It was not declared by Iran. It was made by the Iranian, it was revealed by the Iranian immigrants and then picked up by the agencies such as Mossad and the CIA and highlighted to the world. So the Fordo has always been regarded as the smoking gun which Iran did not want to reveal, and that's where they wanted to carry out their...
As a member of NPT, could they have a secret plant like this? Was it legal?
No, absolutely not.
They've transgressed the NPT, obviously.
Yes. Yeah. So there are several points on which they have transgressed. They went into trigger mechanism, research on trigger mechanism. And also they are developing missile technology, which is of course beyond the purview of IAEA, but it's a component of contention. So there have been a lot of activities which have been carried out by Iran, which are not consistent with the NPT agreement, which it is signatory.
So that's why nobody believes them when they say it's only for peaceful purposes that they're enriching uranium.
Whether you believe it or not, under the NPT, it is entitled to carry out civil nuclear energy research. It is definitely entitled to enrich uranium up to 5%, and even up to 20% for medical isotopes.
No, actually, that's where the rub is. The rub is that IAEA is insisting that Iran has to come clear on its past.
Yes.
And on that respect, Iranians have still not cooperated. Okay. So if you see the latest IAEA report, actually the IAEA report says that everything is fine, but on these aspects, Iran's cooperation is still lacking.
Okay. Now let's assume Iran cooperates and a draft deal comes through by the end of this month. Let's assume that. Then how soon could the sanctions against Iran be lifted? How many of those sanctions can be lifted by the US president alone through a fiat? How many can he suspend? And would he require to go to would he be required to go to the US Congress for lifting others?
There are three kinds of sanctions. Yeah. One is the UN sanctions.
Yeah. I'll come to UN later. I'm just talking about the US sanctions.
US itself. The US, there is a problem. The president can lift a few sanctions, which he has done, But given the kind of problems that he has with the Congress, he has to go slow on that. And the Congress actually is going further ahead to tighten more sanctions, which he is threatened to veto. So I would say that US vis-a-vis Congress, President vis-a-vis Congress, will be the last point of the lifting of sanctions. And Jawad Zarif actually has said this in response to the congressional letters. He said that US Congress is not sovereign. It is the international law.
Yeah. In any case, this is a deal. It's not a treaty which requires congressional approval. If the nuclear deal with Iran does not come in the category of international treaties, because treaties in America have to be ratified by Congress. This is a deal which the executive enters into, which doesn't have to be taken. The deal itself doesn't have to be taken to Congress.
In fact, it is a deal between P5+1 plus Iran and Iran.
But so not a treaty under US law.
US Congress cannot outdo this, cannot overrule this.
I say, let us be realistic. It is essentially a deal between the Americans and the Iranians.
And others will sign.
The others are camp followers. If the American president finds it impossible, if a successor president finds it impossible for domestic political reasons to honor this deal, he'll have no compunctions in freezing it.
Fine. Let me ask you a slightly different question on UN sanctions. What kind of UN sanctions will be lifted and what kind of sanctions would remain? Because earlier Ravi pointed to Iranian attempts to make missiles, for example. So missile technology transfer sanctions, are they likely to remain while some other sanctions will be lifted?
But missile technology sanctions are not strictly...
Not linked to this, but I'm saying that for example, their conventional weapons are not linked to this, but there is a sanction.
There is no treaty. Iran is not bound, and nobody is bound by any treaty for missiles.
Yes.
So, UN Security Council acting tough, particularly at this juncture when Russia and China are actually not playing ball fully on many things. So, that would be a bit difficult. And Iran has consistently maintained that UN Security Council has gone beyond its pale to put these sanctions. So, I think missile technology related things, there's already MTCR and all these 5-6 countries are members of MTCR. So, they will control it. I think the main point is about IAEA related and NPT related.
Okay. But Russia and China, Ravi, are very keen and eager to lift conventional arms sanctions against Iran. Why is that?
No, Russia and China are eager to lift all kinds of sanctions against Iran because Russia is planning to build another 8 reactors and China is the largest importer of Iranian oil. So, in fact, the oil imports of both India and China have increased in the last last year. We have gone, beyond the sanctions limit. The biggest problem is in payments. That's where
okay, quickly, you wanted to say something.
Let's focus on the main sanctions, which interest Iran. They are related to banking and they are related to oil. I think these are the two sort of types of sanctions which the Iranians want lifted and which, as Ravi says, are also in our interest. Because we are having tremendous problems. You may exceed limits, but eventually the Iranians have huge rupee assets here. What will they do?
We need to take a break at this point. We'll be back again with this discussion in a bit. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're discussing the prospects of a nuclear deal between Iran and the United States. Ambassador Sharma, why did US President Barack Obama choose to address the Iranian people directly through online video message on Navroz? Was it because he himself is facing problems back in America? 360 US congressmen, Republicans and Democrats have written to him that they will decide on easing of sanctions on Iran and they want a particular kind of a deal. So is he saying that, look, I know you've got problems back home, but so have I?
I think his main thrust is to appeal to Iranians to look at what is opening up before them. Yeah. That's why his statement has all the promises of actually mainstreaming of Iran, in short, in code, mainstreaming of Iran in international commerce, in international oil trade and technology transfers, which is a big giveaway from the US side. And the president is saying this, which would be sufficient leverage on the moderates in Iran, like led by Rouhani, to tell the hardliners that, look, we have got all this on offer from the US, and if we do the deal, these things will be coming. So that, I think, and then he appeals to the younger lot who actually wants it, because in Iran, there is this domestic situation where Rouhani's election actually was supported by the younger people, and the younger people are more keen to connect with the world and the social media and all that stuff.
Yeah, Ravi.
I would like to add to what Ambassador Sharma has said. It is not only President Obama who is facing a hardline lobby in his country. President Rouhani is also facing a similar hardline in his own country. And hundreds of legislators, about 260 legislators have signed a petition to Rouhani not to compromise until all the sanctions are lifted in one go. That's exactly what Ayatollah himself has said. And when Ayatollah is considering this economy as a resistance economy, President Rouhani calls it as the government of hope and recovery. So he's promising, something to deliver.
Vivek, you want
I think the real issue is before the American system and also before the Iranians is Obama's ability to deliver on the sanctions given the intense opposition that he has in the Congress.
No, but I'm saying that you...
And the approach that he has made directly to the Iranian people is essentially an implicit signal to them that, look, I have the ability to deliver and I will deliver. I have difficulties, but I will overcome them. That is the signal. Because in Iran, there is deep skepticism, especially after what the congressional open, the 47 senators letter, open letter to the Iranian people, that, look, you are entering into this, but be careful.
But these congressmen who are writing letters both sides, first of all, that dynamics has changed after Netanyahu's speech, because now Democrats are unlikely to sort of take sides with the Israeli Prime Minister against their own president, but leave that aside. My question to you is...
Don't ever
underestimate
the Jewish lobby,
okay,
please.
Right. But my question is that all deals are compromises. What Obama administration is seeking and what the Iranian president is seeking is a compromise deal. Now, these people who say all or nothing, they are deal breakers, aren't they?
They are.
Well, I think the issue is what kind of a deal. You can call them deal breakers with this kind of a deal. So, it's a definitional thing.
Okay. But I would like to add one point, Bharat. It's not a binary option that if there is no deal, Iran will immediately go for nuclear option. It is not like that. Or if they succeed, Iran will give up its nuclear option. It's a bit more complicated than that. So that's why they are stretching it to 10 years. So to keep them on a leash.
Okay, Vivek, how would if the Obama administration signs an agreement with Iran, can the US allies in the region surrounding Iran force it to backtrack? Force the Obama administration to backtrack? Because not all of them, including Israel, not all of them are happy with what's going on.
Well, you are right. The Saudis, for example, are deeply worried. At the moment, the new Saudi king is appealing to everyone in the larger Sunni world, including Pakistan. There have been reports they want Pakistani troops on the ground.
To protect its boundary.
Yes. So, given that situation, there will be pressure from the Sunni state, but I think the Americans have carefully analyzed this and they've decided to buck it. That is Obama.
Ambassador Sharma, what is wrong if Israel or American allies in the region say that this kind of a limited conditional deal is really a victory for the Islamic Republic and poses a long-term threat to all of them?
I think there the heavy lifting will have to be done by the Republic of Iran. Because, and if you notice in the last 2 years, both President Rouhani and Jawad Zarif have made a lot of, demarches and approaches to Saudi Arabia and the Gulf countries. And if you were to watch their statements, you cannot find any hard sentence against the Gulf Arabs anywhere. About Israel also, they have been very cautious. So this is the way they have to go. The Americans would allow them to come to the mainstream, and the Iranians will have to reassure its neighbors that they have no intentions of this kind. Their biggest fear was the American hostility. If Rouhani is able to deliver on that reduction or, moderation of the American hostility to a considerable extent, the hardliners will be satisfied.
Okay, let me ask you something else.
No, may I just add there? You see, this particular deal will begin leading to a configuration, a reconfiguration of the entire West Asia and I would even say North Africa as we know it.
We'll meet after 31st and discuss that. But let me just ask you now that how should India view this deal? Would we want this deal to become successful? Is a nuclear Iran good for us, which is sanctioned? Or is a non-nuclear Iran with no oil embargo, with the free regime of trade and investment, good for us?
Bharat, a nuclear Iran is disastrous for us. I think that is an objective we should always have. However, we also have to be realistic. We do not have any instruments ourselves to prevent it or to promote the situation. Therefore, I would think that at the moment, our interests and those of the Obama administration are in alignment.
Okay. I'd like to add to that, that, you know, today the world situation is so changed that India is on the side of the global order. So, successful deal would actually go a long way to strengthen the IAEA and the NPT regime. We have an interest in the success and the strengthening of this regime, and if this fails, then Iran might get out of the IAEA, and there will be further erosion of the whatever global nuclear order which has been established, which has now accepted us.
Okay, last word to you. So how would a successful deal benefit India?
Oh, enormously. Besides these overall objectives, on a pragmatic scale, it will ease our oil imports from Iran. You know, at one time, Iran was the second largest exporter of oil to India. Today, it has been replaced by Iraq. And we will go back to developing our relations both on the trade front as well as on the political front. Because you must remember that Iran is the dominant regional power in that entire region. And you have to have good relations with Iran.
Okay.
It's the only democracy.
That's not a very happy thought as far as I'm concerned.
Is the only democracy equally in the entire stretch?
Well, a kind of democracy.
I have no interest. I have interest in India's interest, not in spreading democracy.
But I'm talking of power politics.
Okay. Power politics, exactly, but you don't need a dominant Iran.
We've really run out of time. We are pushing against time. We have to end the discussion here. I'd like to thank Ravi Joshi, Vivek Katju, Ambassador Sheel Sharma for coming here and discussing this subject. Thank you very much indeed. That's all we have for you today. We'll be back again next week as usual. Till then, goodbye and thanks for watching India's World.